Was there any benefit to being a pilot and getting into the real estate world, and as a pilot just flying around into new markets, discovering markets? Yeah, like certainly you must have been more privy to markets than the typical investor that never actually may get to visit a market before they invest there.
It was a huge advantage because I was based. So I was based at Chicago O'Hare, LaGuardia, DC. My last base was actually Denver. And so I was able to go and see these cities, and I was always shopping real estate on my overnights. And then also I was getting like 13, 14, 15 days off, because typically in the aviation space, you get 4 days on, 4 days off, 4 days on, 4 days off. And so it actually gave me time when I got back home to Scottsdale, I can go and look at real estate. When I bought my first deal, I'd have 4 or 5 days to actually renovate the units. And so for sure, like, I always think the biggest mistake for people is when they're like, when you grow up somewhere, you have to go and see other cities. You have to go and see other spots because you see the growth, you see the trends, you see different things that maybe you're not seeing in your city. You see the path of progress. So I've always been a student, and I've always loved real estate. So I used to take advantage of, like, okay, the airline's paying for my hotel. The airline's paying for me to overnight. The airline's paying me to eat. So when I was done doing all my job and all my duties, I would go and shop and drive blocks and shop real estate all over the U.S.
That's cool. So the thing that is always going to be like, I'd love your insight on how you can do this, because you're probably going to be a big help to a lot of the audience today, which is a lot of people get really nervous about investing long distance, and they're like, man, you know, what happens if I get called in the middle of the night and this and that? You were on an airplane, and it's not like you could just take a phone call on an airplane because they make you put it in airplane mode, but mostly because you don't have reception, right? So if you don't have reception, you can't physically answer a phone call. How can you even run a real estate business that way?
Well, it's difficult. You know, in honestly, when I bought my fourplex, I was managing it myself. I'd have my girlfriend help me. Like, when we're all getting started out, you literally have to get creative. So my girlfriend would help me, like, if I was traveling. But typically, you know, if they left a voicemail, I'd get back with them within 4 or 5. My typical flights were between, you know, call it 2 and 4 hours. So that wasn't a huge issue. But yeah, no, it's a big deal. Like, when you buy deals in other cities and states, you want to make sure you have boots on the ground, because you have to have somebody who's managing it very close. And that's actually one of my biggest fears. Like, that's why when I started investing in real estate, I started investing in my backyard, because I was actually terrified. I was so scared to go to San Antonio, in Austin, because Texas was a really big market back in 2012, 2013. There was a lot of that growth between Austin and San Antonio, but I was always so terrified because I didn't have any boots on the ground. I didn't know any management companies. I didn't know anybody who managed real estate. And the smaller the deal is, the harder it is to find a management company to actually manage it.
Were you pretty good at that point? You know, you said that you're working with your girlfriend and she's picking up the slack for you a little bit. Were you pretty good at sort of turning off the real estate button while you were flying? Or did it take a while for you to sort? Because, like, for me, when I go into the movie theaters, this is my big thing. When I go into a movie theater, I'm like, I'm not going to get to enjoy this movie because I'm definitely going to get a text message or a phone call in the middle of this movie. And of course, it always does happen. Did that ever happen? Did you ever go through that when you were up in the air, or were you able to shut that off pretty easily?
You can't shut it off. I'm the same as you. Like, I'm always looking at my phone. It's just always like, I used to not go on vacations because I was like, well, what if the toilet gets backed up? What if they call me? Like, what if they do this? Like, what if I'm international and they can't get a hold of me? Like, I was the typical scared young investor in real estate, and I wanted to do it and manage it all myself.